I'm tired of being a janitor. I'm a millionaire superhero, for Pete's sake.
Master Larry, we've been over this. It was the only job you were qualified for.
Oh.
This review has been made possible by Norbert thanks to his great support on Ko-fi. If you want to be cool like him, please head over to my commission page to learn more details on how you can order your own requests for a single cartoon episode for me to review. After reviewing 3 great Christian cartoons that have largely faded into obscurity, I'm finally talking about the only truly mainstream animated franchise of the non-secular variety, VeggieTales. Now, my own experience with watching Bob the Tomato, Larry the Cucumber, and the other talking edible plants has mostly been casual throughout my life, but there are elements in the franchise that I love. Bob and Larry's chemistry is fun to watch. I'm nostalgic for Jonah, a VeggieTales movie, which had an amazing musical number by Anointed, and there are some genuinely hilarious moments.
Who are you? I'm from the IRS, and I've come to attack Shark.
But I'm not focusing on the mainline CGI VeggieTales today. Instead, I'm reviewing an installment of the short-lived 2D animated spin-off LarryBoy, The Cartoon Adventures. I was even less knowledgeable on this side of the VeggieTale verse until recently, although I do remember drawing the 2D LarryBoy as a commission for Kristen Frady's back in 2023. For this review, Norbert actually gave me a choice between talking about the first episode, LarryBoy and the Angry Eyebrows, or the second episode, Lego My Ego. I immediately felt like going with the former, mainly because I saw it during the making of my Lenny and Sid review, so I already had a bit of an idea of what I have to say about it. Besides, it is the first episode, so it ought to give a good first impression for newcomers, though I watched Lego My Ego anyway to get an additional taste of the cartoon adventures. Speaking of Lenny and Sid, this review is like a direct follow-up to that one, since LarryBoy The Cartoon Adventures was developed by Tom Bancroft, whose equally talented twin brother Tony was the co-creator of Lenny and Sid. Similar to how Tony is known as the Pumbaa guy, Tom is most famous as the Mushu guy, being the supervising animator of the Eddie Murphy Dragon in Mulan. But for as much as I want to interpret this as a battle between the Bancroft twins over who had the better Christian cartoon, I won't be doing too much comparisons between LarryBoy and Lenny and Sid today. Instead, I'll primarily bring up the 2 CGI VeggieTales videos centered around LarryBoy's superhero alter ego that predate the cartoon adventures. We'll get into those details once I establish the episode's plot and main lesson it teaches. The story of the Angry Eyebrows is an easy one to summarize, with its central lesson being how you should not hold on to feelings of anger for very long. A villain named Awful Alvin unleashes its evil scheme in the form of flying disembodied eyebrows aiming to insert themselves onto the citizens of Bumbleberg so they can permanently hold their grudges. Meanwhile, LarryBoy, disguised as a mild-mannered janitor at the newspaper offices, witnesses a first-hand grudge when Mom Mushroom gets upset with him for accidentally destroying her useless hair-unclogging invention, the Knitmaster 3000, which she hoped would make the headlines instead of another LarryBoy saves the day scenario. With that being said, it's only natural for Mom Mushroom to be one of the first victims of the Angry Eyebrows. Aided by some help from his butler, played by Archibald Asparagus, LarryBoy must not only save Bumbleberg citizens from being grouches forever, but also test his own strength for letting go of anger once he's under Awful Alvin's clutches. Before I get into what I liked about LarryBoy and the Angry Eyebrows, I promised I would compare and contrast the cartoon adventures with the 2 LarryBoy videos from the mainline VeggieTales series predated it. The original LarryBoy specials appeared to be a more straightforward Batman parody with a darker presentation, LarryBoy speaking with a gruffer voice that was hard on Mike Naraki's throat, and even having Archibald's butler role literally named Alfred, which had to be changed to Archie, presumably for copyright reasons. On the other hand, the faster-paced cartoon adventures is lighter by comparison, both visually and tonally, on top of incorporating more Superman-like elements. Like Clark Kent, Larry works at a newspaper publication in this canon, but in his case, he has the low-ranking position as a janitor because it was the only one he was qualified for, despite being a millionaire. Meanwhile, Vicky Cucumber, one of several characters exclusive to the series, is essentially the series equivalent to Lois Lane. Also, Bob the Tomato and Junior Asparagus are the only other regular VeggieTales characters aside from Larry and Archie to appear in the cartoon adventures, but LarryBoy can still be seen cruising in his Larrymobile either way. I have watched both LarryBoy and the Fib from Outer Space and LarryBoy and the Rumor Weed during the writing of this Angry Eyebrows review, and I'll conclude that whether our main hero is 3D animated or 2D animated, both incarnations offer a fair share of lovable moments in terms of its storytelling, character portrayals, and humor. However, I can't help but feel that the charm of the classic CGI VeggieTales ranks a little above the cartoon adventures, and it's no wonder why the series is considered a gold standard in Christian animation. The Fib from Outer Space in particular has two great scenes I kept replaying, LarryBoy stopping Bob from turning off the QWERTY song.
I like that song. Let it play.
And the earworm known as LarryBoy's music video. I grew to love this groovy song so much. So yeah, this is like choosing Batman over Superman, except it's technically the same hero this time. Nevertheless, LarryBoy and the cartoon adventures isn't short on things that are worth praising. It retains the main VeggieTales series' ability to find an inventive way to teach a life lesson that people of all ages, Christian or not, can take to heart, like letting go of grudges in the case of the Angry Eyebrows. By the way, the use of the word inventive was an intentional pun given that the story involves two inventions, the titular crow-like eyebrows that cause the main conflict, and Ma Mushroom's Knitmaster 3000. Which proved to be more useful than the other characters thought once Larry gets it fixed. Now, the Angry Eyebrows aren't as strong as Awful Alvin hoped they'd be, because all it took for them to be released is for LarryBoy and the other Bumbleberg citizens to simply be like, you know what? I'm just gonna let it go. There's a chance that, had everyone remembered sooner that they have control over their emotions in spite of the eyebrows attached to them, the conflict would have been resolved faster. Heck, they probably didn't need the help of LarryBoy and his memory of bok choy's lecture at Bumbleberg Community College. But of course, it was still a good thing that the Angry Eyebrows were all lured by LarryBoy to be transformed into a giant knitted nightcap thanks to the Knitmaster 3000, and turn on their creator as the nightcap is used to capture him for jail time. Therefore, any subsequent anger the residents feel will be short-lived. Speaking of Awful Alvin, he may be your stereotypical over-the-top hammy villain whom you can't take too seriously, but he's unsurprisingly one of the best things about this episode. He has an awesome design, his diabolical voice provided by co-director Larry Whitaker reminds me of Dr. Nefarious from Ratchet and Clank, which is a good thing, and I love how he's so pathetic that the only headband he could afford is a lamp with a crudely drawn face on its shade. One other interesting fact about Awful Alvin I found out is that he made a comeback in the 2019 VeggieTales show in what appears to be a remake of this Cartoon Adventures episode that I'm reviewing. I only saw a trailer for said remake, but I can already see how it differs from this Angry Eyebrow story. Oh, and one more thing about Awful Alvin before we move on, there's his little victory dance. It got me thinking, yep, he's evil alright, he's trying to revive a dance craze that's better off staying dead. But the scene that got me open-minded about reviewing the Angry Eyebrows is the exchange between LarryBoy and the Scarlet Tomato during the former's nightly superhero classes at Bumbleberg Community College. The school sequence in general was a highlight, and one other detail I liked being the Hulk-like Electro Melon releasing his anger to the point of shrinking down into a literal string bean. But it doesn't top LarryBoy pointed out how the Scarlet Tomato's name is redundant, since most tomatoes are red. Not to mention both of the Scarlet Tomato's superpowers, flying and defying gravity, are basically the same thing, and I love how he misses LarryBoy's point.
Now the Green Hornet, that works. You see, 'cause, well, most hornets aren't green.
I am not a hornet.
Although it got me wondering, Do green tomatoes even exist in the VeggieTales universe, and are they segregated from the red ones? But wait, Bob is the only other tomato in the franchise, right? So were all of the other tomatoes turned into pizza sauce or what? Okay, let's move on before I ask more questions about the near extinction of talking tomatoes. My comments on the production aspects of LarryBoy the Cartoon Adventures will mostly center around its 2D animation, but I want to quickly bring up one of the voice actors, Sari Belgo, who played Vicky and Mom Mushroom. I didn't mention her by name in my Lenny and Sid review, but she was in that series too, as the voice of Lenny's mom and Woodrow. Since her filmography is mostly limited to non-secular productions, including the long-running radio series Adventures in Odyssey, we can safely assume she is a voice actress who got credited by her real name rather than a pseudonym like some of the notable actors I highlighted in Lenny and Sid or Little Dogs on the Prairie. Nowadays, Sari seems to be doing well as an interior designer. Okay, time to give my thoughts on the key thing that makes this LarryBoy series stand out from the rest of VeggieTales, the 2D animation. While his brother Tony is directing some traditional hand-drawn animation with Lenny and Sid, Tom Bancroft, with the help of Larry Whitaker over at Cornerstone Animation, was directing what was one of the earliest series to be entirely animated in Adobe Flash, although elements like character designs and background layouts were still drawn by hand on paper. The character animation was executed as a fine combination of frame-by-frame movements and motion tweening. While the standard Muppet-like CGI versions of the characters are more charming, the Cartoon Adventures looks very appealing in its own right, another good example of a 2000s cartoon emulating the mid-century practice of using flat and stylized designs as seen on Dexter's Lab and the Powerpuff Girls. It also helps that we got the legendary Dan Haskett and the late great Bob McKnight as part of the crew. However, it was because of those stylistic similarities to Dexter and Powerpuff why LarryBoy 2D ended up being a commercial and critical failure, according to VeggieTales co-creator Phil Vischer. Parents felt like the Cartoon Adventures videos were a waste of money since they were already paying for cable through which their kids can watch that style of cartoons on Cartoon Network. Well, by that logic, the parents probably shouldn't pay for cable just to watch Powerpuff Girls, since they can already get Timo Supremo on ABC Kids for even less money. In any case, neither LarryBoy the Cartoon Adventures, nor 321 Penguins for that matter, did anything to save Big Idea Entertainment from filing for bankruptcy following the box office bombing of Jonah, a VeggieTales movie, and the lawsuit they lost against ZEROric Studios. Not to mention, Cornerstone Animation was reported to have poor working conditions that resulted into its own demise. This series only had a total of 4 episodes, which is 2 more than Lenny and Sid, meaning in terms of longevity, Tom's cartoon reigns supreme over Tony's. The downfall of Big Idea is the long story detailed in Phil Vischer's multi-part blog article. In case you're interested in reading it, the link's in the description. Of course, the VeggieTales franchise continued to put out more projects post-2003, with a 3rd movie currently in the works for a 2026 release, starring none other than LarryBoy. This means any stress from the bankruptcy situation was let go, as if Phil remembered what LarryBoy taught us in this episode. I can't wait for more specifics about the upcoming movie, and I wonder if Awful Alvin will return once again. Even as a casual VeggieTales consumer, I can't say that LarryBoy the Cartoon Adventures is the best thing in the franchise, but at the very least, the Angry Eyebrows episode is up there based on what I saw. It was a creative, harmless story about how to unload those angry eyes of yours. Working on this review has got me feeling more enthusiastic for VeggieTales than ever before. Thank you, Norbert, for finally giving me a chance to look at something VeggieTales related. Also, congratulations on finally hitting 1,000 subscribers. To everyone else watching, the link to watch LarryBoy and the Angry Eyebrows will be in the description. And as always, please remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and leave an angry emoji in the comments to confirm that you watched this review until the very end. Thanks for watching and take care.